friends, how are you? Welcome to Changing Tracks. Today, Mike Devault is joining us all the way from the States. You're very welcome to our program today, Mike.
Oh, thank you, Christina. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Mike, can you tell us a little bit about where you're from, your family?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in the Midwest in Wisconsin, and my dad is originally from there. My mom is originally from Spain. So I grew up a little bit in both places, in the Midwest, the Chicago, Wisconsin area, and then also in Spain.
Tell us a little bit about your childhood. Were you raised Catholic? Did your parents try to bring you up in the faith?
Sure. We were Catholic. I grew up going to Catholic school. And obviously in Spain at the time, Catholicism was the predominant religion there. So while we were Catholic, I wouldn't say that we were necessarily devout Catholics. We would go to Mass, and I don't really remember any times where we sort of prayed together at home or where we sort of lived our faith outside of the Mass setting. So, while the faith was planted in our house, in our household, on both ends, in the United States and in Spain, it was, I think at that time, it was probably the late 70s, early 80s, it was fairly superficial.
Do you remember praying as a kid? Was it something sincere, or was it just something superficial, part of the daily routine?
I think it was mostly just a routine. My prayer life was pretty non-existent, and any prayers I don't think I learned how to pray the rosary properly till I was in my 40s. So it was, maybe they taught us, but I just remember in school, as a child, maybe you're not really paying attention that much, but that the faith was more, and this is in Catholic school, but it was more superficial, more, I don't know, sort of the depths and the beauty of the faith wasn't really taught as much as I think it could be. And so yeah, no, my prayer life was pretty much maybe a little prayer before bed, but nothing sort of that was, touching my heart or building a relationship with the Lord.
Was there a point when you felt like you hit rock bottom, where you said, I feel empty? Did you associate that with the fact that you didn't have God in your life?
Yeah, I think as far as like hitting rock bottom for me was, I probably hit rock bottom tons of times throughout college, but again, without having a good faith life, I have no idea where to turn. But eventually I met my wife, and in terms of like everyday life, that was a huge improvement, right? Like now I had somebody to lean on, but in terms of the faith, she was Catholic too. She went to the same grade school that I went to when I was young. And, we probably mostly because of me, we didn't go to Mass. We didn't really practice the faith at all. But, I would say in terms of hitting like true rock bottom, that didn't happen until well into my late 30s. So for this entire time, from 8th grade on, I was pretty much a Catholic, just like floating around the ocean without, any sort of like bearing on what to do. I said my Hail Mary and my Our Father before bed, but that was pretty much it. And then I think throughout the years after college, I just continued to see the church as, I don't really know, but I just didn't think that they were in it for the best interest of anybody. I just saw them as, pretty much I think how the secular world sees them as sort of, again, like super authoritarian church that wants to crack down on everything and squelch everybody's fun. The fun that I wanted to have at that time, they wanted no part of that, and now I understand why. But Yeah, it was that was sort of me. I was a Catholic, not even a cafeteria Catholic, because I was just, I didn't want to know any of it.
Okay, so you went through college, you fell away from the faith, you started getting into the whole party scene, you're doing whatever you want, you meet your wife, eventually you get married, you're working. Now, you said you hit rock bottom in your 30s. So, what led to that, or what happened there?
Yeah, so shortly after we got married, my wife and I, we moved to Florida, and we settled down in Orlando, and then the economy was great and everything. It was easy to find a job. I got a job at EA Sports, which is one of the biggest video game companies in the world. I'd always loved video games as a kid, and I loved sports. I played soccer and a bunch of other sports as a child, so this for me was just like a dream come true. And I loved racing, so they had some openings in their NASCAR game. So. And I thought, okay, this is it. I was there maybe 3 or 4 days, and I thought, this is, I found, my heaven is this. So I pretty much dove in, head first into the job. I would sleep there at times, would work, 18-hour shifts, whatever they wanted me to do. Like, I pretty much sold myself to them for, 15 years of my life. And it was really during that time working for them that I truly hit rock bottom just in my life and in my spiritual life, where, looking back now, I start to see that was the time when God started tapping me on the shoulder and saying, okay, now you sort of understand this isn't the way that we're supposed to be living. So because during that time at EA, I was moving up quick. I started in their testing department, and then I went into as a producer on the NASCAR game, and then just continued to work my way up. Like, I just would see, get one promotion, and I would say, okay, I'd be happy for about 2 weeks and see, okay, what's the next promotion? What's the next promotion? And it was just get a promotion, then what's the next promotion? Buy a new fancy car, and then like, what's the next fancy car to get? So it was all. And to me, at that time, I thought, this is what, I've been taught is success. This is sort of what, in my life view, was, okay, you're making it. This is great. But as I continued to progress and get sort of more, quote-unquote, successful in that industry, eventually making it up to creative director on the Tiger Woods video game, I just felt like I was less and less happy. Like, I just felt emptier and emptier inside.
Did you think about God, or did you think about how can I feel this emptiness?
I did. I mean, at the time, again, this is probably 6 or 7 years ago, so I wasn't really thinking in terms of God, tapping me on the shoulder or anything, but I was starting to get very strong sort of feelings and my conscience was starting to weigh on me, because I thought, this isn't doing any good, producing any good. Like, we're making these games, millions of people are buying them, but what is this contributing to anything in the world that could possibly do any good? Sure, it's a form of entertainment and distraction, but maybe it was because I was getting older, but probably not. The more I look back on it, I think the Lord was just starting to tell me, it's time to move away from this. And I started realizing that the more I was searching for happiness in my job and in money and in my status, that this sort of hole in my heart was just growing bigger. Like, it was just, I was becoming less and less happy. So that was about, I don't know, my last year at EA. I'd been there almost 15 years, and it just got to the point where I was just always unhappy. Like, I just felt dark inside. I couldn't even tell my wife what was wrong. I just nothing was making me happy. And on the contrary, everything was just making me feel like, again, just sort of like black inside. It was a very strange sensation, but I didn't know where to turn.
When did things start to change? What happened to pull you out of that darkness?
Yeah, and this is where, when I look back now, I would think the Lord, thank you. This is how he works. But I ended up leaving EA. I thought, okay, I need to just try something different. I go to another company, everything's going to be fine. I just need a change of scenery. So I got a job at another huge game company called Zynga. They make mobile games. And I thought, I need to change of pace. Well, 6 months after I left EA, Zynga decided to close our studio in Orlando. So, and that was the first time I'd ever lost my job. And that was sort of like my biggest fear in life. Wasn't like getting lost and going to hell. It was just losing this, precious career that I had built. And then it had happened. And so that was like a complete free fall. As things worked out, the whole studio that we had got sort of like merged into another company called FanDuel, which was, looking back at it, even sort of a worse industry, to be honest, all about sports gambling and betting and sort of fantasy sports for money. And again, I was there probably for about another 6 months, and they shut that company shut down too. So at that point, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just crazy. Like, I was starting to maybe feel like this is not the right thing for me. But again, by then I was probably in my late 30s, maybe 40 already. And, I still wasn't really putting two and two together, that the Lord was trying to tell me something. But that time after I lost my job the second time was pretty much rock bottom, because then a series of things started happening that eventually led me to sort of like this aha moment where the faith sort of burst into my life.
What was that aha moment?
Well, while I was out of a job, I was frantic, sort of just frantically looking for what my next career move was going to be. And I was, at the same time, my daughter, Anna, was getting ready to do her first communion. And this is how far from the faith I actually was, because I remember being on a walk with my wife, and this is probably 5 years ago or so, and saying to her, I don't know, does she really need to have her first communion? Like, what if she just wants to be some other faith? We're just sort of thrusting this upon her. And my wife, God bless her, thank you, Jesus, for her, that she said, no, I think it's important. She needs to have her first communion. And, even though I was trying to, talk her out of this, she was able to, through the grace of God, persist there. And so really it was during that time that I started to just feel this little ping inside saying, if she's going to have her first communion, then we maybe should start going to Mass again. And it was sort of this time away from like all the noise of my career, even though in my mind I was just a tragic mess trying to find something, and really now looking back, it was just my ego that was bruised and hurt, thinking, okay, I've made it up to this level in my career, now I have nothing. And when really the Lord was really setting the table to give me everything. So it was about that time, around the time of my daughter's first communion, that sort of the aha moment happened. And it was, at that time, I'd actually even started to like dabble into going to daily Mass. I thought, I don't know, maybe I need to turn to the Lord. Something about, as poorly catechized as I was, I knew enough to think, okay, maybe you need to just get off your high horse and maybe talk to God about what's going on. So actually, I had gone to daily Mass a couple times, and oddly enough, my mom, who my parents had sort of made a strong comeback back to the faith then, and my mom had actually started kind of sending me some changing track videos. So I actually started watching some conversion stories, and at that time I was like, whatever, I'm gonna have a job, I'll be back in the games industry in a month or so, and like this is just all sort of a bad dream. But I thought in the meantime I'll go check out a daily mass. They're only 25 minutes, so it's no big deal. I got nothing better to do. But it was during that time of my daughter's first communion, my mom brought me a book, and it was about the souls in purgatory, and about this woman who spoke to the souls, and she thought, oh, you might like to read this book, knowing that if it was really about anything else, I probably would have not been interested in. I didn't even really understand purgatory at all at that point, but I had some free time on my hands, obviously, and I was just reading through that book, and it was just in that book that I started to feel like my heart soften, and I started to think, I could be gone tomorrow or today, even the Lord could call me, and I just started to think, am I ready to see Him? Because in my mind, I always thought, well, church is for old people. When they get ready to die, they kind of, you start going to church and you kind of get ready to go. You sort of, there's confession. I knew about confession. I hadn't been in 40 years, but I knew like the Lord's going to forgive me. So again, very selfish, but it was in reading that book that I started to understand. And the book sort of dabbled in, some of the Diary of Saint Faustina and some other saints. So I started to, again, my heart started to soften a little bit, and I started to kind of show goodwill to the Lord. And at that point, He just kicked the door open.
Mike, what was the name of that book you read?
The name of the book is called Get Us Out of Here. It's by a lady named Maria Sima. And that book really just sort of, I don't know, in baptism, you're planted with the seed, and then that sort of like helped to water it. It helped to just open my heart up a little bit. And then I started just reading, I just went in straight for the kill. I started reading like Diary of Saint Faustina, and I wanted to learn more. I thought, wow, I'd never heard the faith sort of talked about in these terms before. So I just wanted to learn as much as I could.
Okay. So after reading all these books, you said that you felt like the Lord was softening your heart. Your life started to change. What happened?
Yeah, so as I was reading through these books, I just started reading more and more and more, and I started really to understand, that there's something below the surface of what the world tells the Catholic faith has. Again, I was still, I'm pretty hard-headed, so I wasn't really like done sort of like grasping on to like any shred of hope to getting back into the games industry or to getting, like a great job again. So while I was, learning more about the faith, and I felt like my heart was softening a little bit, I was still, I still had some lessons to learn. And at the time, I had sort of 3 prospects going for a job, and they all looked pretty good. So I thought, okay, I'm pretty much gonna be able to, pick between at least 2 of the 3. I should be able to decide which one I want. And they were all coming along really well. I was doing interviews, and it all seemed like it was just gonna be sort of a matter of time. And then I'll never forget this. It was on my birthday, and on that day, I got a phone call and 2 emails telling me that all those opportunities had fallen through. And for me, it was just like this moment again, like where everything just came crashing down. And like that sort of darkness that I had been feeling in my job earlier, like it just came back with a vengeance. And I was just, I don't even know, I can't even put the feeling into words. Just like the rug got pulled out from under you. So I don't know though, I felt like this is sort of where, I think I had started growing closer to Our Lady, and I don't really know how to say that it was her, just to say that I had like this, I felt like there's somebody with a gentle touch just with me the whole time. And then I just remember like telling my wife and my daughter, like, I just want to be alone. I just want to like lay down in the room for a little bit and just, it was my birthday, so they wanted to go celebrate. And I was like, no, I'm just gonna, I just need to be by myself. And just this, just darkness and rage inside. And then I kind of remember, like clear as day, just laying there, like feeling all this sort of like hate, and hearing like inside my heart, like, okay, see, you've like gone back to mass, you've done all this stuff for God, and like see how this has all turned out. And then as soon as I started feeling that inside, I like instantly felt a completely different sort of tone say, don't listen to that, that's the devil. And then as soon as I remember like feeling that, I just remember like it was almost like if there was like a heavy like lead sheet on top of me, like somebody was just like lifting it and pulling it completely off. Like I can remember just feeling it, everything just sort of like run out of me, like from my head all the way down to my toes. And literally, like I got up, I walked out, I was fine. Like I don't know, it felt like the influence of like a loving mother. That's the only way I can kind of describe that. So for me, that was just like the turning point. Like at that point, I said, you know what, Lord, I give everything to you, whatever you want me to do. If you want me to have a job, put it in front of me. If you don't want me to have it, I won't work ever again. I'll just whatever for your glory. And then, you know, from that point on, pretty much everything changed. And, you know, to this date, things are, you know, continuing to evolve in my faith life and in my personal life that are just continuing to push me closer to the Lord. Like I said earlier, I hadn't been to confession in 40 years or so. And I remember one time I'd gone to daily mass and I was, you know, leaving, and I had started riding my bike to mass, and I thought, yeah, you know what, I should probably go to confession one of these days. And I was kind of like leaving the parking lot, and then I just remember like somebody grabbing my handlebar and turning it and thinking like, no, you're gonna go today. You're gonna go today. And that was like one of those confessions where you're just in there for like an hour and a half, just letting it all out. And so, you know, there's a series of events that happened like that where it was like, you know, my sort of, I would try to put something off, and then it would be like, no, you're doing it today. Like, just sort of, okay, I guess I'm going now. So, and that, again, that time was sort of like the turning point where at one point I thought, well, I'll never be able to go to daily mass because at some point I'm going to get a job, and, you know, it's going to be, you know, impossible for me to go to daily mass. But, you know, ever since that day, on my birthday, I've gone to daily mass every day since then.
Video games right now are so popular for young people. Do you think that they are putting young people at risk? What would you say to a young person who is obsessed with video games? What message would you like to give them?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that that helped me sort of move out of the video game world was just, and this is probably a grace of the Lord that I didn't notice then, was just how video games were changing from just, you know, a game that you might like to play to the introduction of features that would sort of hook and retain users with the goal of, you know, getting them to, you know, spend more money within the game. So, you know, I think that those sorts of features and that direction within the industry started to weigh on my conscience a little bit. And, you know, at the time I just, you know, I thought it was just something that I wasn't a fan of, because those features never existed in games. They may have to a subtle extent, but the methodology that's used now is much more, you know, psychologically driven, so that these, you know, kids or even adults who you see playing mobile games or even console video games, they're not really in control of their behavior anymore. So that sort of thing started to show. And the higher I got up in the industry, I started to see this and become involved in it, and had to sort of spearhead some of this stuff myself, because I was in charge of, you know, creative direction and the, you know, the features that each game was going to have. So it just I started getting more and more uncomfortable with it. And again, at that time, I thought, well, it's just, you know, my personal preference isn't this, but, you know, in the end, I think, you know, your conscience is powerful, and when you listen to it, you know, it's going to help you to grow closer to the Lord. So that was sort of a blessing that I didn't realize at the time, but it is just it's a danger for parents to watch out for too when they buy these games and they let their kids play video games, that to know that those mechanics are in there. These retention and these engagement mechanics they're powerful, and they're not just little kids games anymore. They're made for hooking and retaining you, because I think it was really after the economic sort of downturn that we had in around 2011 or so that these features really started to ratchet up, because people just weren't buying as many games. So when you sold a game, not only did you need to sell the game, but there's a potential that they might not buy next year's game because of the way the economy was. So if you could get them 99 cents here, 50 cents here after the game was sold, then that became a new revenue stream. So I don't know, I just started to see sort of the greed in all of it, and even through the grace of God, even though I was far from Him, He sort of gave me the strength to walk away.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us today on our program. Thank you for sharing your testimony with us. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Christina. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Well, gaming, video games, apps on your phone, always being worried about social media are becoming an addiction. Addictions appear when we feel empty. The thing is, we just don't want to admit it. So, like what Mike said, let's look inside ourselves and ask, why am I so empty? Why am I using these exterior things? What's missing? The answer is simple. I don't have God in my life. So don't look anywhere else. You need God. And because you need God, you know what you have to do. Thanks for joining us.